Hi, I'm Eleanor and I'm on nature staff, and I wanted to share some of the amazing things that you can find outside when you take the time to explore. Even if you don't have access to a park, there's as much to discover in a square foot of earth as if you were to travel the world. This is one of my favorite places to go around Warner Park because there's a lot of frogs that live down here that we can probably find, and there's usually some turtles that live out there. There's one giant snapping turtle we have here, and you don't see him very often, but he's out and about. But there's almost always some salamanders and some toads. So this little guy is an eastern spotted newt. I don't know if you can see him down there. He might swim away from my hand a little bit. There he went. Here's another right here. But they're pretty cool little guys. They turn bright red when they come up on land at that stage of their life, and they have little black dots. And they're called spotted red Fs. So they're cute little beings. I'm also hearing a bullfrog somewhere in that direction. We've got a lot of bullfrogs that hang out in this part of the pond, as well as a lot of American toads. I was looking at another of the little salamanders and noticed that there's a little bullfrog tadpole right here. They're really cool because they can stay tadpoles for about 2 years and they get to be really big. So they're pretty cool little guys. More salamanders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yeah, I wanted to show this off because this is one of my favorite areas of the park. At some times of year, all of the American toads come down to this pond at once, all of the ones we have in our park, and they're everywhere. And you have to go through with basically a flashlight, and you have to move them away to be able to walk. It's just a few nights a year, but they're almost deafeningly loud. Like while the toads are singing, you can go up and touch them and they'll just keep singing. It's really cool to look at. I was going to show off some more of the bullfrog tadpoles, but they just swam away. But you can see all the little American toad tadpoles. As a comparison, here, I don't know if my hand shows, they're about this big, and then the bullfrog tadpoles can be a lot bigger. Walked past the pond and there's a really pretty area of trails, but I was admiring how pretty the pond skaters look on top of the water. You can see them kind of moving around on top. There's one. They're really cool. I also like to look under the water, and if you're gentle and put the rocks back where you found them, you can turn them over and see if you can find any cool things underneath. Sometimes they'll be on the back of the rocks, and sometimes underneath. So one thing that is really fun about finding things under rocks is it's neat to discover stuff that you didn't know was there. Remember to have an adult helping you if you're picking up really big rocks, especially if the rocks were something large could be underneath them. So if you're with an adult is helping you pick up a rock, you can pick it up by going away from you. That way, if there's something underneath the rock, it goes away from you instead of towards you. So it doesn't bite you, and you've got this helpful shield between you and it. Because while we are looking at cool things, and pretty much nature's pretty friendly for the most part, if we scare it in self-defense might not be so happy about that. So just remember to be really careful, and again, just put things back where you found them. So one reason we always put the rocks back where we found them is it's the habitat for a lot of animals. So right now I'm seeing a little crawfish under this rock, and he and all the other little beings right here live here. But there's lots of little fish swimming around. Let's see if we can catch any of them. There's a little fish. Want to come look at him? See a little fish in my hands? Just remember to be really gentle with everything and put it back where you found it. And be especially careful if it's something like frogs or salamanders that have really sensitive skin. The oils in our hands can hurt them, so it's best not to pick them up when we find them. Just let them be and admire them from a distance. To point out how to identify some plants that you should know in the woods. And one I think we all know about is poison ivy, but some people aren't super great at identifying it. Poison ivy is a little bit difficult because it can look like a lot of different things. So if you come over here and look, often it has its 3 leaves, right? And I remember that it looks kind of like it almost has like one middle leaf that's just that little oval guy, and then the others look almost like mittens on the side of it. So those 2, and then there's one in the middle. But sometimes it's got those little teeth. I say it's like a thumb right there in your mitten, and it's got the teeth that go down it. And other times it's a little more smooth. So you can see how this one right here doesn't have much of those teeth at all, whereas this one has really dramatic ones. So poison ivy can shift a lot in what it looks like, and sometimes it's growing straight from the ground, and sometimes it's growing up the trunks of trees. So it's best not to touch the vines we see growing on trees, because even if they don't have those leaves growing on them, the oils can still get on you all times of year, so it's good just to respect the vines. Just look at them from a distance. But it's a good thing to know, but not something you should worry too much about. If you think that you might have been walking through poison ivy, you don't really have to worry about it though. While it's a good plant to be aware of, it's not one that we need to live in fear of. If you think you might have passed through it, as long as you wash the oils off your body with some cold water, that could be from a sink at home, that could be from a creek you see, then you won't have to worry about it starting to itch. The oils don't actually start to irritate you until several hours afterwards. I made a point to note earlier that poison ivy can grow as a vine and on trees, so I wanted to show this as an example. It's that same poison ivy from earlier, growing way up tall. So one of the other cool plants that you might recognize from camp, we have it around a lot near the streams at camp, is jewelweed. It has these yellow and orange flowers underneath or over the leaves sometimes, but the coolest part to me is the leaves themselves. So when they get wet, they don't really actually seem to get wet at all. Well, a lot of things in nature are hydrophobic. Some leaves, this isn't the only type, some have tiny little hairs that hold little like pockets of air, so it shows like a little shine underneath. Some have oils. There's lots of different ways things can be hydrophobic, and I don't know the exact science of this one, but because it is, you can see that it looks silvery when the water doesn't really seem to touch it, and when you take it out of the water, it looks dry. Another cool thing about the jewelweed is it seems to float. It's hard for me to push it down. Even if it gets water on it, it tends to float. Whereas these other leaves, if you push them down, they pretty much just stay under the water. And the jewelweed tends to travel with the water a bit more than other leaves will. So one of my favorite things to do by the creek is to make rock paint. So what you do for that is you find rocks. It'll often be the circular rocks that you find. Let me see if I can find a cool one. This one. And you'll get it wet, and then you'll rub it on top of another rock. So I'll show you in a second how that looks. So I've got my rock. I'm gonna get it wet, and I'm gonna rub it on top of another rock. And if you're lucky, it'll make a color. And if it doesn't, you can try another rock. This one's starting to, it looks like. Yeah, you can see that a little bit. All right, so you can see the rock paint I made right there. I'm going to show you what it looks like. You can see it makes marks. So it's fun to find. Often the rocks that'll make reddish paint will look anywhere from this kind of red to an almost black color. But it's hard to guess sometimes what color marks the rocks will make. You can even find greens and all different colors on occasion. So just try different rocks and see how it goes. So another cool thing about the rock paint is it'll change colors as it dries. So this is what it looks like right now, and I'll show you guys once it's dry. I added a few more designs onto it, but you can see what was a darker brown has started to lighten a lot, whereas the red stayed a pretty similar color overall.